a hospital parking lot, a crying baby, and a mysterious dog with a mission. When a volunteer nurse stumbles across a dog frantically guarding an abandoned car seat, she thinks she's found a heartbreaking tragedy. But this is just the beginning. What's the story behind the desperate note left with the baby? Why does the dog refuse to leave her side? And how will their lives intertwine in ways no one could predict? This unforgettable journey of trust, danger, and redemption will leave you breathless. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Sarah's footsteps echoed through the empty hospital parking lot as she pushed through the heavy glass doors of St. Clair's. The digital display on her phone showed 11:45 p.m. Another late shift done, another night of helping others while trying to ignore the hollow feeling in her chest that had become her constant companion since Tom's passing. She pulled her navy coat tighter against the cool breeze that whipped through the lot, grateful for its warmth against the autumn chill. Her breath came out in visible puffs as she walked, her comfortable nursing shoes clicking against the pavement. The lot was nearly deserted now, just a scatter of cars belonging to the night shift staff, their surfaces gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Just another quiet night, she whispered to herself, the words hanging in the cold air like tiny clouds. These walks to her car had become a moment of reflection, though lately those reflections only reminded her of the emptiness waiting at home, the silent rooms, the untouched side of the bed, the single coffee cup in the morning. A sharp bark cut through the silence, making her jump. Sarah stopped mid-step, her heart racing as she scanned the dimly lit lot, her hand instinctively clutching her bag closer. The barking came again, more urgent this time, from the far end near the emergency entrance, echoing off the concrete walls. "Hello?" she called out, her voice steady despite her nerves, years of emergency room experience keeping her calm. The barking continued, almost desperate now, with a note of distress that tugged at her heart. Following the sound, Sarah walked carefully toward the back of the lot, her senses alert to any movement in the shadows. As she got closer, she made out the shape of a large Labrador retriever, its golden brown coat catching the light from the nearby lamppost. The dog was pawing at something on the ground, letting out worried woofs between frantic movements, its tail swishing anxiously. Sarah's breath caught in her throat when she saw what the dog was so concerned about. A car seat, placed carelessly on the cold pavement. Inside, wrapped in blankets, a baby whimpered softly, tiny fists waving in the chilly night air. "Oh my God!" she gasped, rushing forward. Her nursing instincts took over as she knelt beside the car seat, her trained hands already moving to assess the situation. The dog moved aside but stayed close, watching intently as Sarah checked the baby's vital signs, its warm breath visible in the cold night air. "It's okay, little one," she soothed, noting with relief that the baby seemed alert and properly bundled against the cold, though the infant's cheeks were pink from the autumn air. "We're going to get you help." Sarah scooped up the car seat and hurried back to the hospital entrance, her shoes pounding against the pavement. The lab followed right beside her, matching her pace, step for step, its nails clicking on the concrete. She burst through the ER doors, calling out to her colleagues, her voice carrying the authority of 15 years of nursing experience. "I need help here. Abandoned infant in the parking lot." The staff sprang into action. Dr. Reynolds and 2 nurses quickly wheeled over a small gurney, carefully transferring the baby for immediate evaluation. Through it all, the lab remained by the entrance, pacing anxiously, its brown eyes fixed on Sarah with an almost human-like plea for help, filled with an intelligence that seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. Later, as Sarah drove home in her old blue sedan, she couldn't help but notice the lab following her car. It kept pace several yards behind, a determined shadow in her rearview mirror, never losing sight of her through the quiet suburban streets. When she finally pulled into her driveway, the dog settled at the edge of her property, sitting quietly under the glow of the streetlight. Its tail wagged gently as it watched her, as if to say this wasn't over. And somehow Sarah knew her life was about to change, in ways she couldn't yet imagine. Sarah's eyes fluttered open to the gentle sound of scratching at her front door. The morning sunlight filtered through her curtains, casting a warm, inviting glow across her bedroom. For a moment, she wondered if the events of the previous night had simply been a vivid dream, but the persistent scratching quickly pulled her from her thoughts. Wrapping her robe tightly around herself, Sarah walked to the front door and peered through the window. There, sitting on her porch with perfect posture, was the Labrador from the hospital parking lot. As soon as it spotted Sarah's face in the window, the dog's tail began wagging enthusiastically. "Well, hello there," Sarah whispered, her breath fogging the glass. The dog's brown eyes met hers with an almost human-like intelligence, as if silently asking to be let inside. Hurrying to the kitchen, Sarah poured her cereal into a bowl and stepped outside. The cool morning air nipped at her skin, but she barely noticed as she set the bowl down on the porch. The Labrador approached cautiously, sniffing the offering before eating eagerly. Sarah watched, her heart melting at the sight of the dog's gentle manners despite its obvious hunger. "You're such a good dog," she murmured, marveling at the creature's poise. "You saved that baby's life, you know that. You're like a guardian angel." The name clicked in her mind, and she smiled. "Angel. That's what I'll call you." At the sound of the name, Angel's tail wagged, and Sarah opened her front door wider. "Would you like to come in?" she asked, her voice warm and welcoming. The dog trotted inside, as if it had lived there all along, immediately making itself at home on the living room rug. Sarah couldn't help but feel a sense of comfort and companionship in the dog's presence, as if Angel had been sent to her for a reason. Later that morning, Sarah's phone rang, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw the hospital's number on the screen. "Ms. Bennett, this is Officer Martinez from Hospital Security. We found something you should know about," the officer said, his voice grave. "There was a note tucked into the car seat last night. It read, 'This baby is safer with strangers than with me.'" The words hit Sarah like a physical blow, and she gripped the phone tighter, her hand trembling. The note spoke volumes about the fear and desperation of the baby's parent, and Sarah's mind raced with questions. What kind of danger would make a parent leave their child in a parking lot? Who was trying to protect this child, and from what? Throughout the day, Angel stayed by Sarah's side, a faithful and steady presence that anchored her as she made calls and took notes about the situation. The dog's calming energy helped ease Sarah's growing concern for the baby and its parent, making her feel less alone in this unfolding mystery. That evening, as Sarah settled onto her couch with a steaming cup of chamomile tea, Angel curled up at her feet, radiating warmth. Looking down at the peaceful dog, Sarah felt, for the first time since losing her husband, a gentle sense of peace steal over her. The house didn't feel quite so empty anymore, and she knew that with Angel by her side, she wouldn't have to face this challenge alone. Sarah jolted awake to Angel's urgent barking. The morning sun barely peeked through her curtains as she sat up, her heart racing. Angel stood by her bed, his tail straight and rigid, every muscle in his body tense with alertness. "What is it, boy?" she asked, reaching out to stroke his golden head. The dog's brown eyes met hers with an intensity that made her pause. His usual gentle gaze had been replaced by something more urgent, almost pleading. As she ran her fingers through Angel's soft fur, memories flooded back, memories she hadn't visited in years. A young girl's face emerged from the fog of the past. Amanda Clark. Sarah remembered her clearly now, a quiet sophomore with haunted eyes who'd spent countless lunch periods in Sarah's office during her brief time as a school advisor. She'd always brought her lunch in a worn brown paper bag, picking at it while avoiding eye contact. "Amanda," Sarah whispered, the name feeling heavy on her tongue. The girl had vanished without warning one day, leaving behind only whispered rumors and concerned teachers. The similarity between Amanda's disappearance and the abandoned baby struck Sarah like a physical blow. The pieces were starting to fit together in a way that made her stomach clench. Determined to take action, Sarah spent the morning at her computer, researching local resources for new mothers. She compiled a list of shelters, support groups, and crisis hotlines, her pen scratching against paper as Angel paced restlessly near the front door. The list grew longer with each search, revealing just how many women found themselves in desperate situations. At first, Sarah ignored his agitation, focused on her task. But as the afternoon wore on, Angel's pawing at the door became more insistent. His whines grew urgent, impossible to dismiss. He would scratch at the door, then turn to look at her with those knowing eyes. Okay, Sarah said, grabbing her coat. "Show me what's so important." She quickly stuffed the resource list into her pocket, just in case. Angel led her through the streets with purpose, his nose to the ground, but his path deliberate. They wound through residential areas until they reached downtown, where Angel finally stopped in front of Pete's Diner, a modest establishment with worn booths visible through grimy windows. The neon "Open" sign flickered weakly in the afternoon light. Inside, the smell of coffee and grilled onions filled the air. Sarah approached the counter, pulling out her phone to show an old photo of Amanda she'd found in her contacts. The image showed a younger Amanda, her smile tentative but genuine, during a rare moment of happiness. "Excuse me," she said to a waitress with graying hair and tired eyes. "I'm looking for someone. This girl." She'd be in her mid-20s now, but she might still look similar. The waitress squinted at the photo, then shook her head. "Sorry, hun. Don't recognize her." She wiped her hands on her apron and moved on to refill coffee cups. Sarah tried 2 other staff members but received only polite headshakes and apologetic smiles. As she stood there, she studied the diner's layout, wondering what Angel had picked up on to bring her here. Her eyes swept over the scratched tabletops and faded menu boards, searching for any clue that might connect this place to Amanda. Back home, Sarah pulled an old cardboard box from her closet. Inside were mementos from her teaching days, cards from students, photos from school events, and possibly something that could help her find Amanda. As she sifted through the papers, Angel lay at her feet, his presence both comforting and encouraging. His tail thumped softly against the carpet whenever she paused to examine something more closely. The task ahead felt daunting, but for the first time since finding the baby, Sarah felt a sense of direction. She had helped troubled students before. Maybe she could help Amanda now. With renewed determination, she continued sorting through the box, knowing that somewhere in these memories might lie the key to finding Amanda and understanding the whole story. Sarah jolted awake to Angel's urgent barking. The morning sun barely peeked through her curtains as she rubbed sleep from her eyes, the remnants of an uneasy dream still clinging to her thoughts. Her mind wandered to Amanda Clark, a quiet girl with sad eyes who used to slip into her office during lunch breaks, seeking refuge from school bullies. Those moments had stayed with her, etched into her memory like photographs. "What is it, boy?" she asked, running her fingers through Angel's soft fur. The memory of Amanda felt stronger now. How the teenager would hug her books to her chest like a shield, speaking in whispers about her troubled home life. Sarah remembered offering her cookies and tissues, watching the girl's shoulders gradually relax in the safety of her office. Sarah spent the next few hours at her computer, making lists of local women's shelters and support services. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she jotted down phone numbers and addresses, occasionally pausing to circle promising leads in red ink. But Angel wouldn't settle, scratching at the front door and whining with increasing desperation. Okay, Sarah said finally, grabbing her coat and car keys from the hook by the door. Let's see what's got you so worked up. Angel trotted ahead confidently, leading her down familiar streets until they reached Joe's Diner, a small restaurant with peeling paint and neon signs that buzzed faintly in the morning light. Sarah's heart beat faster as she pushed open the glass door, a bell chiming above her head, the smell of coffee and bacon wrapping around her. "Excuse me," she said to a waitress wiping down the counter with slow circular motions. "I'm looking for someone, a young woman named Amanda Clark. She would be in her mid-20s now, shoulder-length brown hair, green eyes. She might have come in recently." The waitress shook her head, tucking her cleaning rag into her apron pocket. "Sorry, hun, doesn't ring any bells." Sarah showed the same photo to other staff members, but received only blank looks and polite apologies. Her shoulders slumped as she thanked them and headed for the door, the cheerful bell now seeming to mock her failed attempt. Back home, Sarah pulled an old shoebox from her closet, disturbing a thin layer of dust. Inside were mementos from her teaching days, class photos, thank you notes, and small gifts from students. Her hands trembled slightly as she sorted through the items, searching for anything connected to Amanda, each piece stirring up memories of faces and voices from the past. She found a folded piece of paper at the bottom of the box. It was a sketch Amanda had drawn during one of their talks, a simple drawing of a flower reaching toward the sun, its petals rendered with careful attention to detail. On the back, Amanda had written in neat, careful handwriting, "Thank you for listening." Sarah held the drawing close, her heart heavy with worry. Angel rested his head on her knee, his brown eyes full of understanding, offering silent comfort as she continued her search for answers. The morning sky hung heavy with gray clouds as Sarah pulled into the crumbling parking lot of the Oakwood Apartments. Her fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel, while Angel sat alert in the passenger seat, ears perked forward. "This is where Amanda used to live," Sarah whispered, more to herself than to Angel. The building looked like a ghost of its former self. Windows boarded up with weathered plywood, graffiti sprawled across brick walls, and weeds pushing through cracks in the concrete. Sarah stepped out of the car, her shoes crunching on broken glass. Angel bounded ahead, nose to the ground, leading her past the skeletal remains of what used to be a playground. The dog stopped abruptly near a rusty dumpster, pawing at the ground and whining. Sarah's stomach turned as she approached. "What is it, boy?" Her hands trembled as she began carefully moving aside pieces of cardboard and debris. There, partially hidden beneath a soggy newspaper, lay a familiar blue blanket, the same type she'd found in the park. Next to it was a crumpled piece of paper, the handwriting immediately recognizable. "Oh, Amanda," Sarah breathed, smoothing out the torn page. The words made her heart ache. "I don't know if I can keep running, but I have to keep the baby safe." She recognized Amanda's distinctive cursive from the essays she used to grade, though now the letters shook with fear rather than teenage uncertainty. With trembling fingers, Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed the hospital. "Hi, this is Sarah Bennett. I'm calling about the baby brought in 2 nights ago. Any updates?" "I'm sorry, Ms. Bennett," the representative said kindly. "The baby is doing well, but we still haven't identified the parent. Would you like me to notify you if anything changes?" Sarah thanked them and hung up. Back in her car, she held Amanda's note carefully, as if it might crumble like autumn leaves. Angel pressed his warm body against her side, offering silent comfort. Looking out at the abandoned building, Sarah felt tears prick at her eyes. Somewhere out there, Amanda was alone and afraid, thinking she had no one to turn to. The weight of Amanda's desperation settled heavy in Sarah's chest. She tucked the note carefully into her purse, more determined than ever to find the scared young woman who had once trusted her enough to share her troubles over lunch in a high school office. The morning sky hung heavy with gray clouds as Sarah pulled into the crumbling parking lot of the Oakwood Apartments. Her fingers drummed nervously on the steering wheel, while Angel sat alert in the passenger seat, ears perked forward. The abandoned building loomed before them, its windows boarded up with weathered plywood. Broken glass crunched under Sarah's feet as she stepped out of the car. Angel bounded ahead, his tail low but determined. "Be careful, boy," Sarah called softly, following him around the side of the building. The dog led her straight to a rusty dumpster tucked in a dark corner. Sarah wrinkled her nose at the smell, but noticed how Angel pawed at some debris nearby. Taking a deep breath, she began searching through the scattered items. Her hands trembled as she pulled out a wadded blanket, dirty but still soft. Beneath it lay a torn piece of paper, the handwriting immediately familiar from the countless essays she'd graded years ago. Sarah's heart squeezed as she read the desperate words. "I don't know if I can keep running, but I have to keep the baby safe." "Oh, Amanda," she whispered, her voice catching. Angel whined softly and pressed against her leg. Back in her car, Sarah pulled out her phone and dialed the hospital. "This is Sarah Bennett. I'm calling about the baby brought in a few days ago." "The infant is doing well, Ms. Bennett," the representative assured her. "But we still haven't identified the mother." Sarah thanked them and ended the call, her eyes drawn back to Amanda's note. The paper shook slightly in her grip as emotions washed over her. Worry for Amanda, fear of what she might be running from, and a fierce determination to help. Angel's warm presence beside her offered comfort as she sat there, staring at the desolate building. Something told her Amanda was close, perhaps closer than ever before. She just had to keep looking. Sarah pulled up to the weathered duplex, its peeling paint and overgrown lawn matching the neglected feel of the neighborhood. Her hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel as she parked across the street. Angel's anxious barking filled the car the moment she switched off the engine. "It's okay, boy. Stay here," she whispered, giving him a reassuring pat. But Angel's barking grew more intense, his eyes fixed on the house. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stepped out of the car. The concrete path leading to Ethan's door was cracked, with weeds pushing through. Each step felt heavier than the last as she approached the entrance. She touched the silver cross necklace at her throat, a nervous habit from her childhood, and rang the doorbell. Heavy footsteps approached from inside. The door swung open, revealing a tall man with broad shoulders and cold eyes. His presence seemed to fill the entire doorframe. "What do you want?" Ethan's voice was gruff, unwelcoming. Sarah forced a friendly smile. "Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a friend of Amanda's. I've been worried about her and wanted to check if you'd heard from her recently." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "Amanda? Haven't seen her in months." His fingers drummed against the doorframe impatiently. "Look, whatever she's gotten herself into, it's not my problem anymore." As he shifted his weight, Sarah caught a glimpse inside. A small yellow rattle lay partially hidden under an armchair. Fresh scratches marked Ethan's forearm, visible beneath his rolled-up sleeve. "I just want to help her," Sarah pressed gently. "If you hear anything—" "Listen, lady," Ethan cut her off, taking a step forward. "Mind your own business. Amanda made her choices. Stay out of it." His tone carried a clear threat. Sarah nodded quickly, backing away. "Sorry to bother you. Thank you for your time." Angel's growls grew louder as she hurried back to the car. Her hands shook as she fumbled with the keys. Once inside, she let out a shaky breath, her heart pounding against her ribs. As she drove away, Angel settled his head on her lap, offering silent comfort. Sarah's mind raced with what she'd seen: the baby toy, the scratches, Ethan's hostile reaction. She knew in her gut that he was hiding something, and that knowledge both terrified and strengthened her resolve. Sarah's hands trembled as she gripped the steering wheel, her encounter with Ethan playing on repeat in her mind. Every detail felt significant: the baby toy she'd glimpsed, those telling scratches on his arm, the barely contained rage in his eyes. "He knows where she is," she whispered to Angel, who whined softly in response. "Those scratches, they were fresh." The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the street as Sarah pulled away from Ethan's neighborhood. Her nurse's training had taught her to notice details, and something about that baby toy struck her as odd. It had looked new, not like something left behind months ago when Amanda fled. At a red light, Sarah took deep breaths to calm her racing heart. Angel nuzzled her arm, his warm presence steadying her nerves. The image of Ethan's cold, calculating stare made her shudder. His words echoed in her head, "Mind your own business." But the threat behind them had been crystal clear. The drive home felt longer than usual. Sarah checked her rearview mirror frequently, paranoid that Ethan might follow her. Angel stayed alert too, his ears perking up at every car that passed them. Finally pulling into her driveway, Sarah felt the full weight of exhaustion settle over her. She'd faced dangerous situations before as a nurse, but this felt different, more personal, more frightening. Angel padded close beside her as they walked to the front door. Inside, Sarah sank onto her couch, her mind racing with possible next steps. She knew she couldn't back down now, not when she was so sure Amanda needed help. Angel settled next to her, resting his head on her lap with a comforting weight. "What do we do now, boy?" she asked softly, running her fingers through his fur. The loyal dog looked up at her with understanding eyes, as if sharing her determination to find Amanda, despite the clear danger Ethan posed. The morning sun filtered through Sarah's kitchen window as she sat at her table, Amanda's journal spread open before her. Angel lay at her feet, his tail thumping occasionally against the linoleum floor. Sarah's finger traced over the words, reading them for the 10th time. "The neon lights keep me awake at night," she read aloud. "But this room on the outskirts of town is all I can afford." Her heart quickened as she remembered the Starlight Motel, a shabby place on the edge of town where its signature neon sign buzzed day and night. 20 minutes later, Sarah pulled into the motel's cracked parking lot. The neon sign flickered weakly, even in daylight, casting a pale pink glow on the weathered building. Angel sat up straighter in the passenger seat, his ears perked forward. Inside the office, a ceiling fan creaked overhead. The manager looked up from his newspaper, his weathered face showing little interest. "Can I help you?" he asked gruffly. "I'm looking for someone," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady. "A young woman, mid-20s, thin build. She might have checked in with a baby recently." The manager's expression shifted slightly. "Yeah, I remember her. Paid cash. Baby's not here anymore, though, just the woman. Keeps to herself in room 112. He paused, studying Sarah. "You a friend of hers?" "Yes," Sarah replied softly. "I'm here to help." Walking down the dimly lit hallway, Sarah's shoes squeaked against the worn carpet. Angel padded silently beside her. Room 112 appeared at the end, its brass numbers hanging slightly crooked. Sarah took a deep breath and knocked gently. "Amanda," she called out. "Amanda Clark?" Silence answered, but then a soft shuffling sound from within. Sarah waited, her heart pounding. Finally, the door opened a crack, revealing a pale, drawn face that Sarah barely recognized. Amanda's once vibrant eyes were shadowed with fear and exhaustion, her frame painfully thin beneath an oversized sweater. Who are you? Amanda whispered, but then recognition flickered across her face. Miss Bennett? From school. Yes, Amanda, Sarah said gently. I'm here to help. May I come in? Amanda's eyes darted to Angel, widening in recognition. Her hands trembled on the doorframe as tears welled up in her eyes. You found him, she breathed. You found Angel. Please, Sarah said softly. Let me help you. Amanda stood frozen for a moment longer before her shoulders slumped. With shaking hands, she opened the door wider, stepping back to let them enter. The morning sun filtered through the dusty motel window, casting long shadows across the worn carpet. Sarah took in the sparse room, her heart aching at the signs of Amanda's desperate situation. Empty formula bottles lined the windowsill, and a torn duffel bag spilled its meager contents onto the floor. A worn notebook sat on the bedside table, its pages dog-eared and wrinkled. Amanda perched on the edge of the bed, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her fingers dug into her sleeves as if she could somehow hold herself together through sheer will. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, telling a story of sleepless nights and constant fear. The baby, Sarah began softly, keeping her voice gentle and steady. Can you tell me why you left her at the hospital? Amanda's shoulders trembled as tears spilled down her cheeks. I had to, she whispered, her voice cracking. Ethan. He said if I ever tried to leave, he'd use the baby to find me. He said no one would believe me over him. She wiped her eyes with shaking hands. I couldn't let him hurt her. I couldn't. Angel padded across the room and settled at Amanda's feet, resting his head on her shoe. The simple gesture seemed to help, and Amanda's breathing steadied slightly as she reached down to touch his fur. You did what you thought was best, Sarah assured her, pulling a chair closer but maintaining enough distance to not overwhelm Amanda. You were trying to protect her. Slowly, like ice thawing in spring, Amanda began to share more. She spoke of Ethan's controlling behavior, how he isolated her from family and friends, how his temper grew worse after the baby came. Her words tumbled out in broken phrases, punctuated by quiet sobs. I've been so scared, Amanda admitted, twisting a loose thread on her sleeve. Every time I hear footsteps outside, I think it's him. Sarah leaned forward, her voice firm but kind. Listen to me, Amanda. We need to act quickly before Ethan can find you. I want to help you, but we don't have much time. Amanda lifted her gaze, meeting Sarah's eyes. Through her tears, a tiny spark of hope flickered to life. She nodded slowly, her hands finally unclenching from their tight grip on her arms. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Sunlight streamed through the dusty motel window as Sarah unpacked fresh groceries on the small table. Amanda watched with tired eyes, her hands wrapped around a warm cup of coffee. The simple breakfast of toast, eggs, and fruit seemed like a feast after days of barely eating. You need to keep up your strength, Sarah said softly, pushing a plate toward Amanda. Angel lay at Amanda's feet, his tail thumping gently against the worn carpet whenever she reached down to touch his head. As Amanda picked at her food, her shoulders gradually relaxed. I have something, she said suddenly, her voice barely above a whisper. On my phone. I recorded Ethan, the things he said, the threats. Her hands trembled as she pulled an old smartphone from her jacket pocket. But it won't play properly anymore. I think he might have damaged it during one of his episodes. Sarah leaned forward, hope flickering in her chest. Amanda, that could be exactly what we need. Evidence like that could help protect you and your baby. You really think so? Amanda's voice cracked with emotion. I know someone who might be able to help, Sarah said, pulling out her own phone. Jack Rivers. He's a private investigator who specializes in cases like yours. He knows how to recover damaged files. Amanda's eyes darted nervously to the window. Can we trust him? Absolutely. He's helped many women in similar situations. Sarah dialed the number, stepping away to make the call. When she returned, her face was bright with optimism. He can meet us tomorrow morning. They spent the next hour carefully packing Amanda's few belongings into Sarah's spare duffel bag. Each item told its own story of survival. A few changes of clothes, some baby pictures hidden in a torn envelope, a small stuffed bear meant for her child. Amanda jumped at every sound from outside, a car door slamming, footsteps passing by, the rumble of a motorcycle. Angel stayed close, his presence steady and watchful. As darkness began to fall, Sarah zipped up the packed bag. We're making real progress, Amanda. One step at a time. Amanda nodded, though her eyes kept drifting to the window. I want to believe that, she whispered. Angel pressed against her leg, and she buried her fingers in his fur, drawing comfort from his warmth. Inside Jack's small office, the morning sun filters through dusty Venetian blinds. Amanda clutches her phone tightly, her knuckles white with tension. Sarah sits beside her, offering silent support while Angel settles at their feet, his watchful eyes never leaving Amanda. Don't worry, Jack says, his gentle voice matching his kind face. I've helped many women in similar situations. He extends his hand slowly for the phone, careful not to startle Amanda. She hesitates before passing it over, her fingers trembling. Jack connects the phone to his computer, his fingers moving swiftly across the keyboard. The quiet hum of equipment fills the room as he works, occasionally muttering technical terms under his breath. Amanda leans forward, her breath catching with each click and tap. Got something, Jack announces after several tense minutes. He turns the screen toward them, showing a partially recovered audio file. Some segments are corrupted, but there's enough here. When he hits play, Ethan's voice fills the small office. The menace in his tone makes Amanda flinch. You'll never leave me, not with my baby. The words hang in the air, crystal clear despite the static that surrounds them. Tears stream down Amanda's face as she listens, but there's relief mixed with her fear. Sarah squeezes her hand, watching as Jack saves copies of the file to multiple secure locations. This is exactly what we need, Jack assures them. It's clear evidence of his threats. We can take this to the police. Later, back at the motel, Sarah helps Amanda pack her remaining belongings into a small duffel bag. Amanda's hands shake as she folds a worn sweater. What if he knows? She whispers. What if he's already figured out where I am? We're going to get you somewhere safe, Sarah promises, trying to project confidence she doesn't entirely feel. Suddenly, Angel's head snaps up. His ears perk forward, and a low growl builds in his throat. The growl turns into sharp, urgent barks as he faces the door, his body rigid with alertness. Amanda freezes mid-fold, her eyes wide with terror. Sarah's heart pounds as footsteps crunch on the gravel outside, growing closer to their door. The sound stops directly outside, and both women stand perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. The silence in the motel room felt suffocating. Amanda's rapid breathing was the only sound until Angel's low growl cut through the tension. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as heavy footsteps approached their door. She pressed a finger to her lips, motioning for Amanda to stay quiet, then crept toward the door on trembling legs. Amanda! Ethan's voice boomed through the thin walls. I know you're in there. His fist pounded against the door, making both women jump. Amanda pressed herself against the far wall, her face ghost white with terror. Sarah steadied her voice, trying to sound casual. Sorry, wrong room. No Amanda here. Stop lying, Ethan roared. The door frame splintered as he slammed his shoulder against it. You can't hide from me. The door burst open with a deafening crack. Ethan's massive frame filled the doorway, his face twisted with rage. But before he could step inside, Angel launched himself forward with explosive force. The dog's teeth sank deep into Ethan's forearm, drawing a howl of pain and fury. "Run!" Sarah screamed, grabbing Amanda's arm. They scrambled toward the back window, while Angel and Ethan struggled violently. The dog refused to let go, even as Ethan tried to shake him off. Sarah pushed the window open and helped Amanda climb through. Shouts and concerned voices rose from nearby rooms as neighbors emerged to investigate the commotion. Ethan, still wrestling with Angel, glanced at the gathering crowd and cursed. He finally managed to break free from Angel's grip and fled, leaving a trail of blood drops behind him. Angel limped after Sarah and Amanda as they raced to Sarah's car. His fur was matted with blood, and he whimpered softly as he climbed into the back seat. Amanda cradled his head in her lap, her tears falling onto his golden fur. "Hold on, boy," Sarah whispered, her hands shaking as she started the car. She drove as fast as she dared to the nearest veterinary clinic, stealing glances in the rearview mirror at Angel's labored breathing. The veterinarian, a kind-faced woman in scrubs, examined Angel quickly but thoroughly. "He's got some deep cuts and bruising, but nothing life-threatening," she assured them. "We'll need to keep him overnight for surgery, but he should make a full recovery." Amanda stroked Angel's head one last time before the vet's assistants gently lifted him onto a stretcher. "You saved us," she whispered through her tears. "You saved us again." Sarah's house felt like a sanctuary after the chaos at the motel. Amanda stepped inside, cradling her baby close to her chest, her arms trembling. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "I'm so sorry, little one. Mommy's here now. I'll keep you safe." Sarah bustled around the kitchen, putting together a simple dinner of soup and sandwiches. The familiar motions helped calm her nerves, though worry for Angel gnawed at her heart. In the living room, Amanda sat in a worn armchair, gently rocking her baby while humming a soft lullaby. The evening light filtered through the windows as they settled at the kitchen table. Amanda's spoon clinked against her bowl, her food barely touched. Suddenly, her shoulders began to shake. "This is all my fault," she choked out. "Angel got hurt because of me. I left my baby in a parking lot. What kind of mother does that?" Sarah reached across the table, taking Amanda's hand. "A mother who would do anything to protect her child. You showed incredible courage leaving Ethan. Getting help isn't weakness, it's strength." Amanda looked up, tears streaming down her face. Sarah took a deep breath, then shared something she rarely talked about. "When I lost my husband 3 years ago, I thought I'd never feel whole again," Sarah said quietly. "I blamed myself for not seeing the signs of his illness sooner. But eventually, I learned that carrying all that guilt was only hurting me more." Amanda squeezed Sarah's hand as they sat in understanding silence. The baby cooed softly from the portable crib nearby, and Amanda's face softened at the sound. Later that night, Amanda stood over her sleeping child, watching the gentle rise and fall of their chest. Her fingers traced the edge of the crib as determination sparked in her eyes. She might be broken, but she wasn't beaten. With Sarah's help, she would fight back. She would reclaim her life, for herself and for her baby. The morning sunlight streamed through Sarah's kitchen windows as she dialed Jack Rivers' number. Her fingers drummed nervously on the counter while she waited for him to answer. "Jack, we need your help," Sarah explained, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Ethan found us at the motel yesterday. We have to move quickly with the evidence." Jack's response was immediate and reassuring. "I'll guide you through the process. The recording may not be perfect, but combined with other evidence, it builds a strong case. Document everything, every threat, every incident." In the living room, Amanda sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by papers and her worn journal. Her baby slept peacefully in a borrowed bassinet nearby. Sarah joined her, spreading out the collected evidence on the coffee table. "Each piece tells part of your story," Sarah explained gently, helping Amanda organize the materials chronologically. When Jack arrived that afternoon, his briefcase tucked under his arm, he worked methodically. He photographed the journal entries, downloaded the threatening messages from Amanda's phone, and carefully labeled everything. "Remember," Jack said, his voice kind but professional, "details matter. The more specific you can be in your statement, the stronger your case becomes." Amanda stared at the blank paper before her, pen hovering uncertainly. "I don't know where to start," she whispered. Sarah squeezed her shoulder. "Start with your truth. Just let it flow." Slowly, Amanda began to write. Her hand trembled at first, but as the words came, her grip steadied. She wrote about the first time Ethan raised his voice, how his control tightened like a noose, the terror of pregnancy under his watchful eye. Tears splattered the paper as she described her desperate escape, leaving her baby with only Angel to guard her. Hours passed as they worked, the stack of documented evidence growing. Finally, Jack gathered everything into his briefcase, promising to submit it to the authorities immediately. In the quiet aftermath, Sarah and Amanda sat together on the couch. The baby cooed softly in Amanda's arms, tiny fingers wrapped around her mother's pinky. "Sarah," Amanda's voice cracked with emotion, "you've been my lifeline. When I was drowning, you pulled me to safety." "We're not done yet," Sarah replied softly, "but you're not alone anymore. We'll face whatever comes next together." Sarah's phone rang early that morning, the police sergeant's voice carrying news they'd been desperately waiting for. "We have Ethan in custody," he said. Sarah's hand trembled as she thanked him. She found Amanda in the nursery, gently rocking her baby. "Amanda," she said softly, "the police caught him. Ethan's been arrested." Amanda's eyes filled with tears, her arms tightening protectively around her child. "Really?" Her voice quivered. Are they sure?" "Yes, they're sure." Sarah sat beside her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "He can't hurt you anymore." Though relief flooded Amanda's face, worry lines still creased her forehead. "The court process? I don't know if I can face him." "You won't be alone," Sarah promised. Over the next few days, Sarah helped Amanda take steps toward healing. They visited the community center where parenting classes were held, the cheerful instructor welcoming Amanda warmly. Angel, still sporting bandages but tail wagging, accompanied them everywhere. Dr. Walker's office was painted in soothing blues and greens. Amanda sat nervously on the plush couch, twisting her hands in her lap. "Everything you're feeling is valid," Dr. Walker said, her kind eyes meeting Amanda's. "You protected your child at great personal cost. That takes immense courage." Amanda's shoulders shook as she began to cry. "I felt so weak, so ashamed." "You're not weak," Dr. Walker assured her. "You broke free from abuse. That's incredible strength." At home, Angel kept his watchful vigil, limping slightly, but determined to stay near Amanda and the baby. His steady presence helped ground her when memories threatened to overwhelm. "I want to file for full custody," Amanda told Sarah one evening, her voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "I need to make sure he can never use our baby to control me again." Sarah squeezed her hand. "I'll be right beside you, every step of the way." Amanda managed a small smile, the first genuine one Sarah had seen. Angel rested his head on her knee, and she scratched behind his ears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Both of you." Sarah balanced 2 bags of groceries as she climbed the stairs to Amanda's new apartment. Angel followed close behind, his limp barely noticeable now as his tail swished back and forth. The building wasn't fancy, but it was clean and well-maintained. A perfect, fresh start. "Welcome home," Sarah said warmly, setting down the bags to pull out her housewarming gift. The dishes were simple but cheerful, decorated with tiny blue flowers. "Every new home needs proper dishes." Amanda's eyes welled up as she took the gift. "Thank you for everything." They spent the morning unpacking boxes and arranging furniture. Angel explored every corner of the apartment, sniffing curiously, before settling near the baby's portable crib. The little one gurgled happily, reaching out to pat his soft fur. "It feels strange," Amanda admitted, folding tiny onesies. "Having my own place again. Being free." Her hands trembled slightly on the fabric. "Sometimes I wonder if I can really do this on my own." Sarah paused from organizing the kitchen cabinets. "You're not alone, Amanda. And look how far you've already come. You're so much stronger than you realize." "Some days I don't feel strong at all," Amanda whispered. "That's okay too." Sarah squeezed her shoulder gently. "Healing isn't a straight line. Small steps forward are still progress." The baby let out a delighted squeal as Angel gently nuzzled her, making both women smile. Amanda watched them, her expression softening. "A month ago, I couldn't imagine feeling safe again, or having people I could trust. And now?" "Now," Amanda picked up her daughter, holding her close. "Now I'm starting to see little glimmers of hope, even though everything ahead feels overwhelming sometimes." "One day at a time," Sarah reminded her, unpacking groceries into the fridge. "That's all any of us can do." Amanda nodded, a faint smile crossing her face, the first genuine one Sarah had seen in days. "I promise I'll try my best. For her, for myself, for this second chance we've been given." Angel padded over, resting his head against Amanda's leg as the baby reached down to pat him. The simple moment held its own kind of peace, a small family finding its footing, one careful step at a time. The warm sunlight filtered through gauzy curtains in Dr. Walker's office, casting a soft glow on the comfortable armchairs and potted plants. Amanda sat with her shoulders hunched, her fingers twisting together in her lap as she faced the counselor. Dr. Walker, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver-streaked hair, settled into her chair with a gentle smile. "Take all the time you need, Amanda," Dr. Walker said, her voice steady and reassuring. "We're here to move at your pace." Amanda drew in a shaky breath. "I don't even know where to start," she whispered, her eyes fixed on her hands. "Perhaps we could start with what brought you here today," Dr. Walker suggested, holding her notepad but not writing yet. Slowly, like water breaking through a dam, Amanda began to speak. Her voice trembled as she described Ethan's controlling behavior, how he would check her phone, monitor her spending, and isolate her from friends. "At first, I thought he was just protective," she said, wiping away tears. "But then everything became about control." Dr. Walker nodded encouragingly, offering tissues as Amanda continued. The words came faster now, years of pent-up pain spilling out. "My mom," Amanda's voice cracked. "She stayed with my dad even though he hurt her. I always promised myself I wouldn't be like her, but—" Fresh tears fell. "I ended up in the same situation." "But there's a crucial difference," Dr. Walker pointed out gently. "You found the courage to leave. You protected your baby." Amanda looked up, meeting Dr. Walker's eyes for the first time. "I'm so scared of messing up, of not being good enough for my baby." "That fear shows how much you care," Dr. Walker said. "You've already shown incredible strength by breaking free from Ethan. That's not something your mother was able to do." As they talked, Dr. Walker helped Amanda explore her feelings of guilt and fear, guiding her to recognize the courage in her choices. "You're not just surviving, Amanda," she explained. "You're actively choosing to create a different life for yourself and your child. That's remarkable." By the end of the session, Amanda sat straighter in her chair, her hands no longer fidgeting. A small spark of hope had kindled in her eyes. Outside the office, Sarah waited in her car. As Amanda climbed in, she turned to her friend, with tears in her eyes. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness. "Dr. Walker helped me see something today," Amanda said quietly. "I'm not just my mother's daughter or Ethan's victim. I'm stronger than I thought." Sarah reached over and squeezed her hand, seeing the first real glimmer of optimism in Amanda's expression since they'd met. "Maybe," Amanda continued, her voice growing stronger, "maybe I can actually build a good life for us. For me and my baby." The autumn sun painted golden patches across the park's grass as Sarah and Amanda found a quiet spot near the playground. Amanda held her baby close, scanning the area with cautious eyes while Angel settled beside them, his tail sweeping across the ground in gentle strokes. "It's a beautiful day," Sarah said softly, spreading out a checkered blanket. "How are you feeling?" Amanda managed a small nod. "Nervous, but okay." She watched other families enjoying their Saturday morning, their laughter carried by the gentle breeze. A colorful ball rolled toward them, followed by the pitter-patter of tiny feet. A toddler boy, no more than 3, stumbled after it. Behind him, a man in his early 30s jogged over. "I'm so sorry about that," he said, scooping up both the ball and his son. His smile was warm and genuine. "This little guy's still working on his aim. I'm David, and this is Tommy." Angel's ears perked up, but he remained relaxed, which seemed to ease some of Amanda's tension. "I'm Amanda," she said quietly, adjusting her hold on her baby. "And this is Sarah." David's eyes crinkled at the corners as he smiled. "How old is your little one?" 4 months, Amanda replied, her voice growing slightly stronger. "Oh, the sleepless nights phase," David chuckled. "Tommy here just started sleeping through recently. Game changer." Amanda found herself smiling despite her nervousness. "Really? When did that start?" "Around 6 months, David said, settling Tommy down with his ball nearby. "Though I probably jinxed it now by mentioning it." Sarah watched as Amanda's shoulders gradually relaxed. The conversation flowed naturally to baby milestones and parenting challenges, with David sharing funny stories about Tommy's attempts to climb everything in sight. "Single parenting isn't easy," David admitted, watching Tommy play. "But it's worth every moment." Amanda nodded, understanding reflected in her eyes. "Yes, it is." For the next hour they sat talking, while Tommy played nearby, and Angel kept a protective watch. Sarah noticed how Amanda's responses grew longer, more confident, though she still startled slightly at sudden movements or loud noises. When it was time to leave, David waved goodbye as Tommy blew enthusiastic kisses. Amanda looked back at them, a small but genuine smile playing at the corners of her mouth. It wasn't much, but it was a start. One crisp morning, Sarah's hands trembled as she opened the official-looking envelope from the courthouse. Her heart skipped a beat as she read the contents. Ethan's sentencing date was set for next month. She immediately called Amanda, who rushed over with her baby in tow. "It's happening," Sarah said softly, sliding the letter across her kitchen table. "The sentencing is scheduled for October 15th. Amanda's face paled as she read the document, her fingers gripping the paper tightly. Angel pressed against her leg, offering silent comfort as tears welled in her eyes. "I don't know if I can face him," she whispered. Sarah reached across the table, covering Amanda's shaking hand with her own. "You won't be alone. I'll be right there beside you." Over cups of steaming tea, they began working on Amanda's victim impact statement. Amanda's voice cracked as she described the constant fear she'd lived with, the way Ethan had isolated her from friends and family, and how she'd finally found the courage to leave. "I used to think I was weak," Amanda said, wiping her eyes. "But Dr. Walker helped me see that surviving takes incredible strength." Sarah nodded encouragingly as Amanda continued writing, pouring her truth onto paper. Angel rested his head on Amanda's lap, his steady presence helping ground her when memories became overwhelming. "Remember," Sarah said gently, "this statement isn't just about the pain he caused. It's about your journey to freedom, about choosing a better life for your baby." Hours passed as they refined the statement together. Amanda's words grew stronger, more confident, as she described her hopes for a future free from fear. When she finally set down her pen, exhaustion and relief mingled on her face. "I couldn't have done this without you, Sarah," Amanda said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're the family I never knew I needed." She reached down to scratch Angel's ears. "Both of you are." Sarah pulled Amanda into a tight hug, feeling the younger woman's tears dampen her shoulder. "We're in this together," she promised, "every step of the way." The morning sun cast long shadows across Sarah's driveway as she loaded her car. Her hands shook slightly as she smoothed her blazer, checking her watch for the third time. Inside, Amanda sat at the kitchen table, her victim impact statement spread before her, lips moving silently as she practiced the words one last time. "You've got this," Sarah said softly, placing a gentle hand on Amanda's shoulder. "Every word comes from your heart." Amanda nodded, her fingers nervously adjusting the collar of her navy blue dress, a borrowed piece from Sarah that made her look both professional and strong. Angel lay at her feet, his brown eyes following her every movement with unwavering devotion. At the courthouse, the marble halls echoed with footsteps and hushed voices. Amanda's grip tightened on her papers as they waited outside the courtroom. Sarah held her hand, squeezing it gently whenever Amanda's breathing became too rapid. "Remember," Sarah whispered, "you're not alone anymore." When Amanda's name was called, she rose on shaky legs. The walk to the stand felt endless, but she kept her chin up, just as she'd practiced. Her voice quivered as she began reading her statement, but with each word, it grew stronger. "I lived in constant fear," she said, her words cutting through the silence of the courtroom. "Every day was about survival, for me and my baby." She described the manipulation, the isolation, the terror of never knowing what might trigger Ethan's rage. From his seat, Ethan stared at her with cold eyes, but Amanda refused to look away. She spoke of her hopes for her child's future, her voice breaking only slightly as she described her desperate decision to leave her baby in the hospital parking lot. The judge listened intently, reviewing the evidence, including Jack's recovered recording of Ethan's threats. When the sentence was announced, 5 years for domestic abuse and child endangerment, Amanda felt her knees weaken with relief. Outside, beneath the courthouse's towering columns, Amanda fell into Sarah's embrace. Tears streamed down her face as years of pent-up fear and pain poured out. "You've won, Amanda," Sarah said softly, holding her close. "This is the start of your new life." The aroma of lasagna filled Amanda's small apartment as Sarah arranged a simple chocolate cake on the kitchen counter. Through the window, the setting sun cast warm golden rays across the living room floor where Amanda's baby played with colorful blocks, Angel watching attentively nearby. "I still can't believe it's over," Amanda said softly, setting plates on the table. Her hands were steady now, unlike the trembling that had gripped her in the courthouse earlier. Sarah smiled warmly. "You were so brave today, Amanda. The way you stood up there and told your truth, it was incredible." They settled at the table, the baby cooing contentedly as Angel gently nuzzled her feet, making her burst into delighted giggles. Amanda watched them, her eyes growing misty. "I couldn't have done any of this without you, Sarah," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "When I think about where I was just a few months ago," she paused, collecting herself. "Standing in that courtroom today was terrifying. My knees were shaking so badly I thought I might fall. But when I looked at you in the audience, I remembered I wasn't alone anymore." Sarah reached across the table and squeezed Amanda's hand. "You did all the hard work. I just helped light the way a little." Amanda took a deep breath, sitting up straighter. "You know, being in that courtroom today, seeing other women waiting for their cases, it made me realize something." She glanced at her daughter, who was now attempting to share her block with Angel. "I want to help others the way you helped me. Maybe volunteer at the women's shelter downtown. If I could help even one person feel less alone." "That's wonderful, Amanda," Sarah beamed. "You'd be amazing at that." Angel's tail thumped against the floor as the baby squealed with laughter, trying to crawl toward him. The sound of their playing filled the apartment with joy, pushing away the heavy memories of the day. Sarah lit the single candle on the chocolate cake, its warm glow reflecting in Amanda's eyes. "Make a wish," she said softly. Amanda gathered her daughter in her arms, holding her close as she looked at the flickering flame. For the first time in years, she felt truly at peace as she closed her eyes and blew out the candle. The morning sun filtered through the shelter's windows as Amanda stepped inside, clutching her volunteer badge. The worn but clean building held an atmosphere of quiet determination. Women sat in small groups in the common area, some holding children, others speaking in hushed tones. Her heart raced as Maria, the shelter coordinator, welcomed her with a warm smile. "Ready for your first day?" Maria asked, leading Amanda through the facility. Amanda nodded, though her stomach churned with nerves. "I hope I can help," she whispered. Throughout her training, Amanda absorbed everything, from safety protocols to crisis intervention techniques. The familiar weight of fear and uncertainty she saw in the residents' eyes touched something deep within her. During breaks, she would sit in the staff room, taking deep breaths to steady herself. In her first week, Amanda found herself sitting with a young mother named Beth, who reminded her so much of herself just months ago. As Beth cradled her toddler, tears streaming down her face, Amanda gently shared her own story. "I didn't think I'd make it either," Amanda said softly. "But there are people who want to help, who will stand by you." Beth looked up, hope flickering in her tired eyes. "How did you find the strength?" "One day at a time," Amanda replied. "And I had help, amazing help." Sarah visited regularly, bringing donations of diapers, clothing, and supplies. Her presence always brought a sense of calm to the shelter. Angel padded alongside her, his gentle nature drawing smiles from even the most withdrawn children. He seemed to know exactly which residents needed his comfort most, often laying his head on their laps or playing gentle games of fetch with the kids in the shelter's small courtyard. As weeks passed, Amanda found herself growing more confident in her role. She helped women fill out restraining orders, sat with them during difficult phone calls, and shared resources she wished she'd known about during her own escape. Each small victory, a woman finding housing, landing a job, or simply smiling for the first time in weeks, filled her with purpose. One evening, after a particularly emotional day at the shelter, Amanda and Sarah sat together on a bench outside. The setting sun painted the sky in soft oranges and pinks, while Angel dozed at their feet. "I never thought I'd be here," Amanda said, her voice thick with emotion. "Helping others, feeling strong." Sarah squeezed her hand. "You did this, Amanda. You found your strength, and now you're sharing it with others." Tears welled in Amanda's eyes as she hugged Sarah tightly. Thank you for showing me what family really means." Sarah held her close, both women understanding that their bond had grown far beyond mentor and survivor. They had become family, chosen and cherished. The spring morning painted the park in vibrant colors as Sarah spread out a checkered blanket on the fresh grass. Amanda sat cross-legged, watching her baby with bright eyes as the little one pulled herself up using Angel's sturdy frame. Birds chirped overhead, and children's laughter drifted from the nearby playground. "Look!" Amanda gasped, her hand clutching Sarah's arm. Her baby took one wobbly step, then another, tiny arms outstretched for balance. "That's it, sweetheart," Sarah cheered while Angel's tail wagged excitedly. The baby giggled, managing 3 more steps before plopping down on the blanket. Amanda scooped her up, pressing kisses to her rosy cheeks. Sarah leaned back on her elbows, taking in the peaceful scene. "It's amazing how much has changed since that night in the hospital parking lot," she mused. "Sometimes I can hardly believe it's the same story." Amanda nodded, her eyes growing soft. "I think about that night often. How desperate I was, how scared." She stroked Angel's fur. "But leaving that note, trusting Angel to find help, it led me to you, to this new life." Angel stretched out beside them, his head resting near the baby's feet as she played with her blocks. Amanda reached for her water bottle, taking a thoughtful sip. "The shelter offered me a full-time position yesterday," she revealed. "They want me to lead their outreach program." Sarah's face lit up. "Amanda, that's wonderful. You'll be perfect for it." "You really think so?" Amanda asked, though her smile showed she already knew the answer. "Of course. And I'll be right here to support you, every step of the way." The baby wobbled to her feet again, taking unsteady steps toward Angel. The dog lifted his head, gently nudging her with his nose before settling his head in Sarah's lap. Sarah smiled, watching Amanda gather her daughter close, seeing the strength and joy that had replaced the fear in her eyes. 1 year later, the community center buzzed with energy as Amanda stood at the podium, her voice clear and confident. Her toddler played nearby with some toys, occasionally glancing up at her mother with a bright smile. The room was packed with faces both familiar and new. Survivors, advocates, and supporters who had gathered for the shelter's annual event. Amanda shared her story with grace, her words touching every heart in the room. She spoke of dark nights and brave choices, of finding strength she never knew she had. When she finished, she joined Sarah and Angel in the audience, wrapping them both in a tight embrace. "I wouldn't be here without you," Amanda whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Sarah squeezed her hand. "You saved yourself, Amanda. Angel and I just helped you see it." The applause echoed through the room as they stepped outside, into the warm sunlight, walking together as a family bound by love and courage. If you enjoyed the story of Sarah, I handpicked this next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.